What if Prime Whitebeard came to save Luffy at Marineford? Just how earth-shaking would that have been? Would Ace have survived? Heck, would Akainu have survived? Well, today we're going to take a look at that question and attempt to give an answer to it. Now, we all know just how much of a fight Whitebeard put up for his final tussle with the Marines. In his quest to save Ace, Whitebeard stood face to face against the Marines and the 7 warlords of the sea, and the battle was still a close call on both parts. On his way to Marineford, Whitebeard took out 23 ships that were tracking him in an instant, leaving the Marines completely clueless as to exactly where he would attack. They didn't have to search for him long, however. At Marineford, his arrival caused the air to electrify, the entire sea to shift, and 2 waves larger than the island itself to clash around. That's the impact that Edward Newgate had wherever he went. Even after the admirals launched an all-out attack at him, Whitebeard wasn't phased. He caught one of Admiral Akainu's magma meteors in his blade Naginata like it was nothing. Edward was a beast of a man, and it'd take more than just one army to put him down. In fact, he tanked 267 stab wounds, 152 bullet wounds, 46 cannonball hits, got half of his face blown off, and still kept pushing on for a good while before finally being defeated. And how old was Whitebeard while all this was going on? 72 years old! He was almost a century old by the time his final battle happened, and he still practically tore apart an entire island! So just how insane would the fight have been if Whitebeard was in his prime, with his majestic blonde hair while he's at the height of his youth? Well, it's not that hard to figure out. In his prime, Whitebeard was said to have been capable of matching Roger in strength, meaning that the two of them were unequivocally the strongest pirates. In fact, Buggy even details as much when he talks about Whitebeard, stating him to be the strongest pirate and the closest to the One Piece. He showed on multiple occasions why he should be considered the strongest man in the world. Yet despite that, he's also just a man who wants nothing more than to build his own family instead of searching for treasure. Even with that, he can't just hide how powerful he is, even if he tried to. For instance, remember how he made the seas unstable when he arrived at Marineford to rescue Ace? Well, in his younger days, he didn't need to have a special stance or focus on using his abilities to shake everything up. All he needed to do was get a little bit mad, and the entire world would shake because of it. No wonder he was so feared. Imagine destroying an entire island without having to do anything but feel angry. It's not just his presence alone that's terrifying. In his old age, Whitebeard was several times stronger and tougher than a lot of the young pirates in his own crew. So of course, in his prime, he'd have been several times stronger and more powerful than he was at the end. Just imagine how insane that would be. The man that managed to take a punch from Akainu that took out half of his face while covered in bullet and stab wounds. That same man can somehow be stronger? It's not even a question. Prime Whitebeard at Marineford would have been able to take out the Marines. And for anyone that somehow thinks he wouldn't be able to take out the Marines, remember that we're talking about the same guy that stood toe-to-toe with Goldie Roger, the king of the pirates, who's definitely another beast as well. Their powers were so on par that the clash of their Haoshoku Haki cracked the air, creating an effect similar to lightning, and also generating a shockwave that blew back everything and everyone on and near the island. During the Summit War, the only reason he couldn't properly use his Haoshoku was because of his illness and health. Back in his prime, Whitebeard, with just his immense mastery of Haki, would be enough to take on the Marines alone. But enough whitewashing the legend. Let's actually talk about what would have changed if Prime Whitebeard showed up to protect Ace in Marineford. Well, first of all, he wouldn't have been slow enough to get caught by Squart's surprise jab attack. He would have easily dodged or even just grabbed hold of the sword before it got close to him. That already makes him 1,000 times more prepared to fight, although it's not like a simple stab to the chest would stop a man like him. Another thing is, he'd definitely have killed Blackbeard and Admiral Akainu. There's no middle ground there. Akainu could barely stand up against a bruised, injured, old, and sick Whitebeard. How can he possibly go up against a fully restored Whitebeard? The only way they'd have a chance against Whitebeard is if they all went at him full force, because a 1v1 battle between Whitebeard and each admiral would be an easy win for Whitebeard. One of the biggest hacks that Prime Whitebeard had at his disposal is his incredibly powerful Conqueror's Haki. With that, he takes out the majority of the fodder Marines just by stepping foot on the island. That's already a pretty impressive feat he gets just for showing up. Now, the only people left to worry about are the big fish, namely the warlords, admirals, and vice-admirals. Now these powerful Marines have to take Prime Whitebeard as well as his crew, Luffy, Buggy, Crocodile, and a ton of powerful and angry pirates. Of course, for all I've been saying about Whitebeard Prime, it's not like he's some sort of all-powerful entity. Now, for all I've been saying about Prime Whitebeard, it's not like he's some sort of all-powerful entity. It's easily implied that while the admirals and vice-admirals were as powerful as Prime Whitebeard, they're around his ballpark in terms of power. So all of them working together would be a lot to take on. One thing is for sure though, and that's the fact that Ace is coming home, and that's a fact. Whitebeard's main goal during Marineford is to save his adoptive son, and there's no way a focused and single-minded Whitebeard wouldn't achieve his goal. It wouldn't be easy, but no matter what, Whitebeard would make sure that he survives. Alright, enough talking about the battle and what could go down. Let's finally take a look at what would happen if Whitebeard in his prime fought at Marineford. As the fight begins, Marco, Whitebeard's right hand, confronts Admiral Kizaru. Marco uses his mythical Zoan Devil Fruit, the Phoenix, to recuperate from Kizaru's lightspeed strikes, while simultaneously matching his ability and strength. Their struggle is ferocious, but Marco's regenerative talents give him an advantage. If Marco begins to weaken, other division commanders take over, turning the tide against Kizaru. Meanwhile, lower-level division commanders confront Aokiji. Despite his ice talents and strategic intelligence, Aokiji finds himself outnumbered and under strain from the unrelenting attack. The more senior officers, including Jozu and Vista, face Akainu. Akainu's magma powers are destructive, but the commander's collective strength and strategic cooperation begins to wear him down. Luffy, motivated by his desire to save Ace, charges across the battlefield. Whitebeard recognizes Luffy's commitment and pushes him onto the execution platform with a tremendous tremor. As Luffy flies through the air, Garp strikes him with a tremendous blow, knocking him to the ground. Garp, conflicted between his duty as a marine and his love for his grandkids, eventually lets Luffy pass, indicating that he wishes Ace to be saved. Whitebeard goes up against Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Despite Sengoku's great force and tactical brilliance, his age is clear. Despite his injuries, Whitebeard battles with the tenacity of a man determined to protect his family. Sengoku, seeing he cannot beat Whitebeard alone, calls for reinforcements, but the battlefield is too chaotic for immediate aid. The warlords, which include Jinbei, Buggy, Crocodile, and Ivankov, maintain their position against the surviving marine soldiers. Their combined strength and distinct talents create a considerable distraction, buying time for Luffy and the commanders. The conflict is now based on time, with Luffy racing against the clock to save Ace. Luffy reaches the execution stage and manages to free Ace. The brothers, alongside Whitebeard's commanders, now focus on turning the battle in their favor. Whitebeard joins the fight against Akainu, and his Quakes clash with Akainu's magma in an epic duel. Meanwhile, Luffy, Ace, and Marco team up against Kizaru. The three of them, combining their Haki and Devil Fruit abilities, manage to overwhelm Kizaru. With Kizaru defeated, they turn their attention to Kuzan. 8 division commanders, along with Luffy and Ace, assault Kuzan from all sides. Despite his best efforts, Kuzan is eventually overpowered by the sheer number of attackers. The commanders then regroup to confront Akainu. The battle against Akainu is intense. Although Akainu is insanely powerful, the combined might of the commanders and Whitebeard himself proves too much. Akainu is eventually defeated, leaving the Marines in disarray. The subordinate captains, including the massive oars, contribute significantly to the final push. Ensuing, the Marines cannot regroup effectively. With the admirals and vice admirals down, the warlords lose the incentive to fight. Mihawk, seeing the tide turning, decides to withdraw, respecting his bond with Shanks. Doflamingo, always opportunistic, also retreats, realizing the battle is lost. Ivankov administers life-saving treatment to Whitebeard, ensuring he can continue to fight if necessary. As the battle drags on, Shanks and his crew arrive, their presence signaling the end of the conflict. Mihawk steps down out of respect for Shanks, and Gecko Moria, still recovering from his defeat by Luffy, decides not to challenge the overwhelming forces against him. And that right there is how I think it would have turned out if Whitebeard was in his prime. It's not going to be an easy win for them by any stretch of the imagination, but it's definitely still a win anyway, and we have the added benefit of 2 legendary pirates surviving. Tell us what you think about this video down in the comments, and if you enjoy our what-if scenarios, why don't you subscribe to the channel so you never miss another upload? Or better yet, click the video that's on your screen now to watch another one. Go ahead, click it!